I didn't pack a bag. There was no time. The night I ran from Oprah's school, I was barefoot, bleeding, wearing the same pale gray uniform they gave us in the mindfulness dorms. No ID band. They'd cut that off after what they called my final adjustment cycle. My fingers were still raw from trying to dig underneath the frame of my cot. And as the alarm lights flashed blue down the hallway, I remember how still everything was. No footsteps, no shouting, just silence, like the building itself was waiting for something. They always told us we were the chosen ones, handpicked, gifted. We were supposed to be Africa's next generation of leaders. And at first, I believed them. I mean, how could I not? The beds were spotless. The food was flown in. We had MacBooks before we even saw a textbook. Everything looked perfect. But those things, they were a mask, a distraction. And I know how this might sound to people watching. You hear Oprah school, and your mind goes straight to the headlines, right? Girls smiling in glossy magazines, award shows, world stages, Harvard-bound futures. All of that happened. That part's real. But what nobody talks about, what never made it into the documentaries, is what went on underneath. Literally underneath. There are no cameras in the sublevels, no guest tours, no vision board sessions down there. And the girls who were sent there, most of them didn't come back the same. Some didn't come back at all. Even now, I can't sleep with my back to the door. I avoid cameras. I don't check into hotels under my real name, because escaping that place didn't mean I left it behind. Not really. The fear followed me. It still follows me. And if you're wondering what exactly they did to us there, I'll tell you. But first, understand this. And it started with the silence. Not at night. Not when people are sleeping. I'm talking about daytime silence. The kind that settles in when there's nothing left to say. The kind that crawls into your chest. At first, I thought I was just adjusting. New country, new climate, new people. But things didn't feel right. Little things. Like why we needed a calibration pass just to walk between dorms. Or why the clocks in the East Wing never matched. Or how they rotated our roommates every 2 weeks, just long enough to build trust before pulling them away. There was a girl named Thado. She arrived the same week I did. We bonded quickly, whispered at night, and made promises to stick together. Then one morning, her bed was gone. Clean sheets, cleared locker, like she never existed. I asked about her at evening check-in. The prefect didn't say a word, just stared at me a little too long, then made a note beside my name. That was the night they moved me to the lower floor. They called it a reflection cycle. Told me it was part of building resilience. That is how leaders are made. I remember the hallway, colder than the rest. The lights never flickered, but nothing was ever truly visible either. Each room smelled different. Mint one night, lavender the next. Sometimes nothing at all, and the rules changed every day. I tried to tell myself it was normal, that I was just tired. Maybe this was some advanced learning model I didn't understand, until I saw what they did to Sindasai. But I'll get to that. What matters now is this: if you think you know what Oprah's school was like, you don't. Forget the camera crews. Forget the awards. Forget the field, good speeches, and the surprise celebrity visits. Those were for the public. For the rest of us, the ones they labeled track 2 candidates, it was something else entirely. And if you're still watching, just know, no one believed us back then either. I used to think the worst part was what they did to us underground. But looking back, it wasn't. The worst part was how long it took me to notice something was wrong. Because everything they did was just believable enough. Our days were packed, perfectly scheduled. Breakfast by 600, uniform checks at 60:30, mindfulness and physical training by 700. Then came the lessons: STEM, focused, leadership, focused, nothing unusual. If you walked through the campus with no context, you'd swear it was a dream. Palm trees, open courtyards, cafeterias with options labeled vegan, gluten-free, halal. Every hallway smelled like eucalyptus. Everything was clean, almost too clean. But then, there were the things no one ever explained. Like the green band some girls wore on their wrists. They weren't part of the uniform, and not everyone had one. When I asked about them, the girls just smiled or looked away. If you kept pressing, someone would pull you aside for refocusing. And then there was the mirror room. That's what we called it. Technically, it was the self-image reflection chamber, a new addition to the Eastern Wing. We were told it was an emotional intelligence exercise. You go in alone, you're given 5 minutes. No teacher, no observer. But when you come out, someone always meets you with a clipboard and writes something down. I remember walking in for the first time. The room was square, cold, lit from beneath the floor. 4 walls of mirror. You could hear a low humming noise, barely noticeable. And in the corner, a camera hidden in plain sight. That's when I realized they wanted you to know you were being watched. That was the point. Because they weren't just teaching us to lead. They were training us to be watched and not react. Later, I found out the girls with green bands had all scored above threshold in those chambers. They started disappearing from normal class schedules. Given special meals, assigned different uniforms, still gray, but with slightly darker seams. They started walking with escorts, speaking less. I asked my hallmate about it once. She just whispered. They passed the mirror, and then she stopped talking to me completely. You'd think I'd want to leave right then, right? But I didn't. I was still trying to earn my place. Still thinking maybe I was the problem. Maybe I just didn't understand how elite schools like this work. But that changed when I noticed what they were doing at night. Every Friday, just after lights out, a few girls from each dorm would get taken out, quietly. No alarms, no calls, just soft taps at the door. They'd follow without speaking, wearing slippers, eyes forward. Most came back the next morning, but not all. And those who did come back never spoke about where they went. The first time it happened to me, I was told it was a night vision resilience test. They gave me these white contact lenses, walked me down the back stairs, told me to count my steps and not react to anything I heard. I remember the smell, bleach and something metallic. We didn't stop in any classroom. We went deeper through a door that looked like it belonged in a hospital, not a school. Inside, I saw rows of girls standing, facing a blank wall. Nobody moved. No one blinked. I was told to join them, so I did. For 30 minutes, we stood there, no instruction, no explanation, just white noise humming from the speakers above. When it ended, someone whispered in my ear, "You're not ready." That's it. And just like that, I walked back upstairs. The next morning, my breakfast tray had no juice, no fruit, just dry toast. And a new schedule marked with a red dot in the corner. That red dot stayed on my daily printouts for the next 3 weeks. And during that time, no one made eye contact with me. Not students, not staff. I stopped asking questions. That was the only way to survive. They told me I'd been selected. That's the word they used, selected. Like it was an honor, like I should be proud. 3 staff members came into my dorm one morning just before sunrise. No knocking, no greetings, just a clipboard, a pair of gloves, and a change of clothes folded on a tray. Shower, one of them said, "Eyes not meeting mine." Put these on. No breakfast. The clothes were all white, not the soft kind from our usual uniforms, but heavy cotton. The shirt had no logo. The pants had no pockets. Just a name tag pinned to the chest with a number, B09. They didn't say where we were going. They didn't ask questions or give warnings. But I could tell from the way the other girls looked at me as I walked past, no one smiled. A few looked down. One even mouthed, "I'm sorry." That's when I knew this wasn't a reward. They walked me through a wing I'd never seen before. Not the mindfulness level, not the infirmary, not even the restricted halls where the scholarship students had biometric testing. This wing was behind the administration block, through a set of locked sliding doors. No signs, no sound. The tiles changed under my feet, from smooth marble to this rubberized gray surface, soft and soundless. Even our footsteps disappeared into it. We stopped in front of a single black door. No handles, no keypad, just a glass panel that scanned my chest right over the name tag and clicked open. Inside, I expected a lab, maybe a counseling room, something clinical. What I found instead looked like a private theater. Rows of empty seats faced a single wall-sized screen. I was the only one let in. They told me to sit, then they left. Lights dimmed. The screen came on. It was me. Clips of me from weeks prior, laughing, eating, brushing my hair. Footage I'd never seen before. Camera angles that weren't from our dorms or classrooms. These were from inside our showers, our mirrors. One angle even looked up from beneath my bed. I wanted to scream. I didn't, because somehow I knew I was being watched right now. The footage kept playing. Then it changed. It began showing other girls, ones I hadn't seen in weeks. One was strapped to a chair, eyes forced open. Another stood still in a white room while voices played, overhead commands, affirmations, orders repeated in low tones. Then the screen went black. A new message flashed, Dio wo wanent to be a leader. Another voice, feminine, mechanical, spoke from the speaker above me. My response determines my next phase, so I didn't answer. It repeated the question. Dio want to be a leader. My throat was dry. My mouth couldn't move, then the door behind me opened again. I was taken into another hallway, this one darker, industrial. Every 10 feet there were doors with no handles. Each had a small viewing slit. Some had lights on inside. Others didn't. One door was wide open. Inside was Thado. Hair shaved, expression blank. Eyes fixed on a screen. She didn't see me. She was mouthing something silently, over and over, like a prayer or a command. I am not my pain. I am what they make me. I am not my pain. Over and over. I wanted to run to her. But the staff member beside me said one thing that froze me in place. She graduated. I didn't know what that meant. Still don't. Because whatever Thado was now, that wasn't graduation. That wasn't leadership. That was erasure. I was guided to a cell, like room. No bed, no window, a camera in each corner. And for the next 72 hours, they left me there. No food, just water through a slot in the wall. Voices played every few hours, soft, polite, familiar. Oprah's voice, clips from old speeches. Phrases about discipline, vision, identity. On the fourth day I was allowed to leave, I was handed back my gray uniform. My name tag was gone. So was my number? I walked out into the morning sun like nothing happened. Like I hadn't seen what I'd seen. And that's when I understood what they were doing here. It was obviously not taught teach us, nor preparing us, but they were changing us. I wasn't sure what I had done to deserve it. No one said anything. There was no announcement, just a quiet shift in my schedule and a uniform left on my bed, new fabric, heavier, cleaner. The name tag no longer had a red dot. The letters had changed too. No longer my name, just a code I didn't recognize. That morning, I was escorted through a hallway I hadn't seen before. The air was different here, too soft, too sweet. It didn't sting my throat like the hallways near the correction units. It felt staged, safe. Even the walls were padded with that soft beige color I used to associate with dentist offices and therapy waiting rooms. And yet, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. We turned a corner, and the noise hit me first. Music and laughter. Not the forced kind we sometimes whispered under our breath after lights out. This was real. Light bubbling, open, throated laughter. It was so unfamiliar I stopped walking for a second just to be sure I wasn't imagining it. But there they were, girls my age, maybe younger, maybe older, all sitting around low tables, drinking fruit juice from glass tumblers, smiling like they'd never heard static through a vent. Their uniforms weren't like mine, sleeker, personalized. Their shoes actually matched. I caught a glimpse of lip gloss. They looked like the girls from the outside videos. The ones used in Oprah's speeches. The ones you see on the magazine covers when donors visit. I used to think those girls were handpicked from the same program I was in. I thought we were all climbing the same stairs, just at different speeds. But I realized then that I'd been underground the entire time, and the staircase didn't go up. It bent sideways. None of the girls made eye contact with me, except one. She didn't smile, didn't blink, just stared long enough to confirm something before turning back to her group. like she'd been asked to identify me. We were escorted through quickly without stopping. No one explained who they were or why we were there. But I knew we weren't the same. I wasn't one of them. Later that day, I was brought to a viewing room. It was quiet, chilled, carpeted. A wall of soundproof glass looked down into a training floor below. On it, another group of girls, poised, clean, blinking in unison, were being walked through what looked like a leadership drill. Eye contact, conflict deflection, branding language, and then I saw her. That, polished, reassembled. No trace of the girl who once cried in the dark with me. Her voice echoed through the observation speaker. Calm, precise, empty. She was saying something about public image, how girls like us needed to radiate discipline, even when we felt chaos inside. I pressed my hand to the glass, not expecting her to see me. But she turned her head and looked straight at me, and then looked right through me. She didn't pause, didn't flinch, didn't frown, just moved on. The moment cracked something I'd been holding together for too long. I wanted to call her name, bang the glass, remind her who we were, what we survived. But I didn't, because deep down, I knew it wouldn't work. She wasn't in that body anymore. Or maybe she was, but she wasn't allowed to be. When they walked me back to my room, I couldn't breathe properly. The lights felt too bright, the floor too still. And there, waiting on the bed, was a sleek black tablet with a single message glowing in white. Congratulations. You've qualified for Tier 1 advancement. Final decision pending. 2 boxes blinked underneath it. A CCP decal line. There was no cursor, no explanation, no timeline. Just those words. And at the bottom, faint as dust, declining, may result in permanent reassignment. That night, I sat on the floor with a tablet across from me. I didn't touch it. I just watched the glow flicker against the wall and tried to remember the sound of my own voice. It had been weeks since I'd spoken more than a few words at a time. It hit me, quietly, that I hadn't laughed since my second week here. That I hadn't felt sunlight on my skin in months. That even if I chose to leave, I wouldn't know who to be on the outside. They hadn't just kept us in. They'd taken everything that might have carried us out. And still, the idea of joining the girls upstairs made my stomach turn. Because I finally understood something. The public-facing girls weren't saved. They were selected. Not for who they were, but for how easily they could forget. I always thought the worst part would be the breaking. That they'd force us into something unbearable. But I was wrong. The worst part was the realization that nothing needed to be forced at all. Everything had already been happening. Quietly. Systematically. Long before I ever noticed. It started with a power cut. Barely a few seconds. Just enough to glitch the lights and freeze the hallway locks. Normally, I would have stayed put like we were trained to do. Sit down. Wait. Don't move unless told. But something inside me pulled forward. I moved fast, slipping past the corner unit before the emergency backup kicked in. I turned down a hall I'd only seen in passing. The air there felt different, heavier, less sterile. At the end was a narrow metal door I'd never been allowed near. No biometric pad, no scanner. Just a cold handle, and it was unlocked. Inside, it looked nothing like the rest of the school. No polish, no music, no artificial calm. Just steel cabinets, low blue lights, and the constant hum of servers vibrating through the floor. I had walked into something buried. Something they never meant for any of us to see. A row of tablets rested on the far wall, all logged in. I tapped the nearest one, and a simple screen came up. No security, just a list. A long list of names. I searched mine. What opened wasn't a record of grades or conduct. It was something else. Footage. Dozens of videos catalog every moment I thought was private. Me brushing my teeth. Me lying awake. Me touching the wall beneath the vent. Each clip labeled with codes and notes. Not one of them said anything about potential or progress. Everything was marked in cold, clinical phrases. Measured. Observed. Judged. I wasn't being prepared, I was being monitored. There was a section beneath the footage I almost missed. A small log detailing my behavioral cycle. It didn't say anything about classes or leadership, just data on when I spoke, when I disobeyed, how long I hesitated when given a task. There was even a note about how long it took for me to stop asking about Sindasai. I searched for her next. Her name didn't bring up a face or a file, just a code and a single status bar. I stared at the words for a long time, but none of it made sense, until I looked through the others. Thato's name came up. Her record was there, but it was clean, too clean. Her footage had been archived, replaced, sanitized. Every girl I searched had a different fate assigned to her. Some were marked for continued evaluation. Others were listed as incomplete or withdrawn. A few had been labeled as processed. The system wasn't tracking success. It was filtering people out. This wasn't a school. It was a sorting mechanism. And the final product wasn't knowledge. It was image. Girls weren't being elevated. They were being reduced to templates, to data points, to smiles that looked good on camera. I found one file that shook me more than any of the others. It was labeled with an ID I didn't recognize. Inside were side-by-side photos. One was a familiar face. Not mine, but close enough to feel unsettling. Same complexion, same hairstyle, same posture. The second image was a refined version of the first cleaner, brighter, softer. In the corner, it read baseline vers, final iteration. That's when I understood. They weren't improving us. They were replacing us. Not physically, not entirely, but mentally, publicly. Whatever didn't match the ideal was either hidden or rewritten. And somehow, through all of this, no one outside knew. The speeches, the headlines, the smiling girls giving interviews, all of that had come from this, from silence, from erasure, from whatever this archive room had turned into. I didn't know how long I'd been standing there. My hands were cold. My body felt far away. I started to back out slowly, afraid that something might lock behind me. But no one came. No alarms. No footsteps. Nothing. Back in my unit, everything looked exactly the same. Same tablet. Same sheets. Same soft light that never really turned off. But now it all felt staged, like a room designed to hold someone who didn't need answers anymore. I sat down on the floor and tried to slow my breathing. But every time I closed my eyes, all I saw were the lists. The labels. The blank screens under names that used to mean something. I had spent months trying to rise above the silence, to prove that I was capable of more. But I hadn't been rising at all. I had been sinking, slowly, deliberately, into something I was never supposed to escape. And now that I knew what lay beneath it all, I wasn't sure what was worse. That I had found out, or that I hadn't found it sooner. I never expected freedom to feel this empty. There was no gate I had to climb, no alarms, no chase, just a door left slightly ajar, one hallway dimmer than usual, and no one standing in the way. It felt too easy, like walking out of a room that had already forgotten I was inside it. That was the first sign. Whatever I had been, whatever they decided I was no longer worth monitoring. I didn't run. I just kept walking. Past the walls, the cameras, the guard post that never turned its lights on. Past the fences that once kept me in and now didn't bother to keep me out. I wish I could say I made a plan after that I rebuilt something, that I told someone. But I didn't. I couldn't. There was nothing left to tell that wouldn't sound imagined. Because the world outside doesn't see what happens in places like that. It only sees what's been approved, the speeches, the success stories. The girls smiling beside microphones and dignitaries framed in light. That's what people believe. They don't see the other track. They don't see what's left behind after the footage is edited, after the uniform is ironed, and the answers rehearsed. They don't see the days we were told to sit still and feel nothing. Or the nights we spent listening to the sound of someone forgetting who they were. I stayed quiet for a long time. I changed cities. Changed my name. Found a room in a neighborhood where no one asked questions. I worked late hours, wore plain clothes, smiled when necessary. I lived like someone who had never been broken apart and stitched back together with silence. But some things stay. It's in the way I flinch when a vent hums. The way I can't fall asleep if the room is too quiet. The way I scan every face on a screen, waiting to recognize someone who shouldn't be there. Someone who used to whisper in the dark and now stands on a stage, polished, glowing, reciting words that were never hers. They say healing is possible, but healing requires that something inside you survived. And I don't know if I did, because I don't dream anymore. I don't remember my mother's voice. I don't keep mirrors in my apartment. When I pass schools, I turn my head away. And when people ask me where I'm from, I lie. Not to protect myself, but because I genuinely don't know how to answer. I left that place, but it never left me. And if there's one thing I understand now, it's this: the goal was never to keep us forever. The goal was to send us back into the world, so changed, so silenced, so reconstructed that no one would even think to ask what happened. We were never supposed to disappear. We were supposed to blend in. I see their faces sometimes, on magazine covers, on TED stages, in commercials about hope and progress. They smile the way we were taught to. Calm, gracious, empty. And I wonder if they remember. Or if forgetting was the final step in their training. Maybe I was just the version that cracked before completion. Maybe they'll come looking for me someday. Or maybe they won't need to. Because the most effective stories are the ones that silence themselves. And the most obedient survivors are the ones who learn to smile, even when the camera isn't on. If this stayed with you, don't let it disappear. Like the video, so others know it's not just a story. Share it if you think someone else needs to hear it. And if you want to keep uncovering what hides beneath the surface, subscribe. Some things are too quiet to be noticed the first time, but they're always there, watching, waiting.